Oh, here we go again. Hello. So it's all begun again. The agony, the ecstasy, the truly awful takes. No, I'm not talking about this podcast. It's the return of FPL proper as the season kicks off in spectacular fashion this weekend just gone, giving us the game week one I'm sure we'll always remember through the mists of time. We are Who Got the Assist. I'm Tom at WGTA underscore FPL on Twitter, Anthony at FPL Stag, also on Instagram, WGTA.FPL. Make sure to give us a follow on those channels. And as I say, as I've been saying throughout the preseason, I'm not going to say this for the whole season, I promise. But subscribe. And also, if you haven't already, please give us a 5-star review if you appreciate this or anything we've done over the last 5 years, as it really helps spread the word of this podcast. Our lead code is 2IP43T. Memorable. And we're also on video. It will never replace the audio, but just so you know it's there in case you want to watch unedited for some reason, search on YouTube to find us. And we're sporting a bit of a retro lineup today, actually, as we're joined by our currently on hiatus, but here tonight, post Tesco order retrieval. It's Tough King himself, Nick at WCA underscore Nick. You right, mate? Have you recovered from our night out with Rockstar and Hindu Monkey the other week?
Hey Tom, yeah, I'm all right, thanks. It's been a long while since my last appearance. A lot's changed. Bigger family, new season, as you said. You're on video now as well, so probably should have made a little bit more effort with my appearance. Still got the beard, of
Shave the
course.
beard.
Yeah, give it a little bit of a trim. But no, all good here, thanks. Definitely recovered though. I did get drunker than my original intentions. Yeah, but no, all good, thanks. So yeah, a pleasure to be joining you guys again for the pod. What are we talking about today, Anthony?
Yeah, great to have you back, Nick. It's been an explosive start to the season. One I think that's sure to live long in the memory and continue to skew people's perception that game week one is a more exciting game week than others than it actually is, because as we found out last week, it's just another game week. But we're in a bit of a bind here because we've only had just one game week. And the tagline of WGTA is FPL Insight driven by data. But as we know from the summer special with the Analytics FC lads and just from ourselves, I guess, we can't really draw a huge amount of conclusions from just one game week, one sample. So what we're going to do is try and take some very responsible takeaways from one game week's worth of data, with plenty of WGTA on-brand caveating going with it. Later in the pod, we're going to have a new form of correspondence coming from friend of the show and serial Doherty mispronouncer FPL Viking. And tech gremlins permitting, that should be a particularly good one for those who are on video. And that'll be followed, of course, by the usual bunch of listeners' questions. But in the first half, we're going to kick off with our game week reviews, the market forces, and of course, those responsible takeaways.
Yeah, let's get into the game reviews. As seems to be customary between the three of us, even though it was an explosive game week one, I came last. Yeah, it was a 96 pointer. So, I mean, to be honest, as I put on Twitter, I'm not sure I ever have guessed on Friday night that I'd be miffed with just 96, just 96 the game week one. But I'm a bit, and I guess we'll get into this actually in a little bit. We had a scenario, where it finally happened for the template. It blew up with regards to that. And as you probably know, but we'll hear in more detail later, it was a really high scoring game week one, and basically all of the key men, everybody did well. It was just your one or two folk outside of the core 8 or 9 players that it really came down to. So, we all had the likes of Sanchez. I'm looking at kind of mine, Nick's, and Anthony's teams here. We all had Sanchez, TAA, Shimikaz. Nick and I had Shaw. Most people had Shaw, but Anthony didn't. But hey, that's because he's a renegade. Salah captain, Bruno, Antonio, Dings, Tony. Most people did have him too. And Nick actually benched him. And Nick's renegade as well. But overall, it came to kind of 2 or 3 others. Just on the outside. And my two real differentials this week, in that sense, were Gundogan and Barnes, both blanked and both consigned me to a middling week in the context of outrageous scores. And I guess it is quite puffed up this week in a lot of ways because of that kind of template explosion. But if you rebase it to kind of some sort of normal expectation, this is the same as me scoring 65 and everyone else scored 70 that I know. Or I could have scored 70 and I've got 65. I'm kind of looking at it ruefully. And Gundog apparently could be crocked too. He was holding his shoulder like he'd done something to his clavicle. So the rolling could be out there as well. But nonetheless, 96, that's my best, or comfortably my best game at one ever. I will take it. And more than anything, I was glad to see the football back. I think Anthony said last week, I'm actually raring to go. I definitely felt that the excitement kind of growing in me on Friday night. cut down very quickly by the performance versus Brentford. But FPL wise, the excitement and the 3 PMs all happening at once, so good. Nick and I were in the pub for those. I was actually complaining at Nick for a lot of that time about Danny Ings not scoring. And the 97th minute, when I gone outside, he did score, and I came back out and I came back in. And I was like, and these sorts of things all make it kind of worthwhile, don't they? That the fans back, everything. I just wish my 2 blood differential did something. But yeah, 96. I think I'll take it. Anthony, what about you?
I'm pretty happy. I'm like, I only had 5 points more than you, but as you say, Tom, I guess it's like the difference that, the 3 players of different, of difference that he might have had from the template that make the difference. Basically what happened with my third player, who I would have said was a bit of a differential, was Mason Greenwood, and he obviously got a goal, and that was enough to kind of propel me 5 points further up, effectively. Otherwise, it was pretty much exactly what you'd expect for a team. Like, I did follow, and we're probably going to touch on them a little in a second. I followed my objective, which was to have 8, let's say, template starters and then 3 not, and I did follow that. So Soufal, Pepe, and Greenwood were my 3 kind of differentials as far as I was concerned.
And Ron Arson, I'm going to have to point out here. I was assuming, I thought you snuck Ron Arson in as your backup goalkeepers, tried to just kind of fluke that kind of final differential.
No, I wasn't counting that. That's why we changed the objective to starting players.
Why, simply?
I don't know. It just kind of just seemed like an interesting one.
Just listening to Sigur Rós, just throw some Icelandic in there.
Yeah.
I really, there was Arsenal as well. So you can't get Aubameyang in now.
Oh yeah, because that was so likely to happen.
What a shame. Or
Tierney. I'm really not worried about having to triple up on Arsenal. So I was quite happy to leave Runes in there. I guess my plan is to probably wildcard within 2, 3, 4 game weeks anyway. So I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, so those 3 differentials: Soufal was 17.09% owned, Pepe was 2.12, and Greenwood was 31.69. I had White and Veltman on my bench, and they're both in single figures in terms of percentages as well. And Alan, of course, the real hero, the sleeping giant, 0.0% owned according to Live FPL. He played more than Brownhill. He got 100% more points than Brownhill. He got 2. Brownhill came on and only got 1. And he even had a single shot. So I'm telling you, 0.03 XG shot. But my God, what a shot it was. Third bench, Alan is there, ready to go whenever the day needs to come. But yeah, that 101 points, I'm pretty happy with it. Obviously, I captained Salah like everyone else. Didn't captain Fernandez, so there's 3 points in the difference there. But I was never going to captain Fernandez. It was never a thought. Antonio, Ings, Tony, the classic starting lineup there. Greenwood and Pepe, aforementioned. Pepe was only going to ever be a 1 week punt for me. I didn't want to put in a City midfielder there and find that I had the wrong City midfielder and being afraid of making the side grade. So instead I was like, you know what, I'll just take a 1 week punt on Pepe, hope for the best. It almost came off. He forced a very good save out of Raya.
Yeah,
he had 4 shots in total.
You must have been on the sofa at that point, just expecting to celebrate differential points.
I was in a pub. I had just made an order. I had placed an order for 1 Beamish and 1 Guinness, and I was staring at the television. It was quite a crowded pub, in spite of the fact that there's COVID regulations still in this country that means the pubs can't be crowded. And it was sad. I was quite disappointed, but I didn't react too violently at the time.
Bang into your Guinness.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Thankfully, I hadn't been served just yet, so I was waiting for it.
I was expecting that story to turn into backhanded.
No. There's no drama to the story. It's exactly as you'd expect from an FPL manager. I just sat there somberly. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Tsimikas, Soufal aforementioned, and Sanchez in goal. So yeah, look, it's fine. I'll be moving on Pepe as expected, and I'm happy enough with taking the gamble. It could have really worked out. Mount was someone I considered for that position, but this is kind of one of my real, if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle type things, because there were others who were considered for that role too, who I didn't go for. So look, I had Pepe, and it nearly worked.
Nearly. And finally, Nick. Wow, what an opening game week. I say what an opening game week. Obviously, 8 points more than me. What's that? 3 points more than Anthony, but still top of the pile. And a bit of classic harassing as well. No Antonio, you still managed to smuggle your way to the top. How did you do it?
Yep, I'm back and I'm top of the table again. So Yeah, as you can see, I went for 4 at the back, slightly different to everyone else. So I put Luca Dean in as that fourth defender, and that didn't really work out for me. Trent and Simicaz got the clean sheets. Luke Shaw disappointing 1 pointer, and Sanchez disappointing as well. But apart from the defence, everyone else scored, everyone else returned. So Salah, the captain, like everyone got those points. Fernandez got those points, but a few key differentials in midfield as well. Ben Rama joined that bullet train and got all those points from him, which was a massive haul.
Nice.
And Mason Greenwood as well. So I went for Mason Greenwood as sort of the 7.5 million pick. I avoided the likes of Harvey Barnes, and really happy with him as well at the moment. Played out of position as forward, number 9, but obviously, it's not necessarily a pick that's going to be in my team for the whole of the season, because it's like Cavani coming back. You've obviously got Jadon Sancho as well, who's going to be in that starting 11 for United, and Martial knocking on the door as well. So, I think temporarily, I think Greenwood's a great pick, and I'm quite happy with how it worked out for him, but not sure how much of a long-term pick he is. And then the forward line. So I benched Tony, and a lot of people were questioning that decision ultimately, but I kind of saw I benched him for the wrong reasons, because I kind of saw Arsenal as a tough match. So I was like, he's probably not going to get many chances or score in that one. But obviously Arsenal lost to get to Brentford, which we probably don't want to talk about too much, Tom. But
I'm fine with it. Yeah, I'm non-tribal, mate.
Non-tribal, yeah, non-tribal, yeah.
If Tom got very sad about Arsenal defeats, he'd be sad a lot of the time.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
I've already got my bad FPL record to deal with. If I added Arsenal to that, I'd be a destroyed man. So yeah.
Yeah, so I benched him, but I'm going to play him this week, I think. So I'm quite happy with that decision. But I also had Callum Wilson in over Antonio, because Tom was kind of promoting Wilson on Twitter, and I was like, I'll jump on that train. And then he abandoned him and left me in the likes of Morpheus Fire hanging with
revenge for
Callum
Perez
Wilson in
3 years ago, Nick, when you were selling that to all and sundry, and you got I think your phone burnt through the mentions when you did that amazing fraud on Jose Perez, and those people had him in. He was absolute dog turd, and people like WGTA, Nick, what have you done? You sold me down the river. So revenge.
Well, Perez was a mistake, but never mind. I think Callum Wilson worked out pretty well, got an early goal, but then he ended up being outscored by Antonio ultimately. So apart from the Antonio decision there, I think everything else I pretty much nailed. So really happy with that 104 points. It's far more than I could ever dreamed of for Game Week 1.
Yeah, no, fair play. Really well done. And I think just one thing that we're going to throw in here on the next on the pod, but every week we're going to talk about our objectives quickly. So remember the last kind of game week of the season, we spoke about this. The last pod of preseason, we spoke about this, and also the very first pod back this year, we spoke about this. And we're going to keep doing it. We're going to have it as being a thin red line, as I said that time, just go through the whole season. I don't think there's too much, Anthony, that really impacts everything here. Although you said earlier on, you're going to start with max 8 template players in Game Week 1. I'm going to get rid of that from this point onwards, because obviously it's happened. But of your 4.75 different objectives, I guess there's nothing really to mention. Just remind people what they were, and then if there's anything there that did go through your mind.
Yeah, so the first of those objectives relates to captaincy, and it was basically to captain with the herds / the algorithms. I, of course, did that. To really do that, you probably had to go with Salah this week. You could say Fernandez was kind of part of that if you were looking at algorithms. Either way, I followed it. Transfers, I've talked about not being afraid of transferring out elite players if they've dropped off. My 2 elite players went and just scored well into double figures, so neither of them is going to be sold anytime soon. If I wish I had Son, if I'd found a way to make it happen, of course I'd have needed about 102 million, but if I'd love to have had him, and I would be keeping him if I had him. And even right now I'm getting a little bit antsy about the fact that I don't have a route to get him for at least another game week. Timings, I couldn't do this wrong really the other day, because on Friday, the objective was not to make my transfers late on a Friday night or early on a Saturday morning. I think I bored you all to tears talking about how the fact that I had a thesis due at 11 a.m. on Friday. So that meant that no matter what, I was fixing my team after that point. So I got it fixed in the time before the deadline after that point, thankfully. So yeah, this time it's basically I'm going to dinner on Friday, and that's relevant only because I'm going to have my transfer done before I go to dinner. That's what I've decided. So
Right,
there you go,
okay.
guys. You can hold
Fair
me to
play.
that. Playstyle then, the other of the 4.75 that's worth talking about. 4.75 objectives is max 10 hits in total, max 1 in the first 5 game weeks. I'm not going to take one now.
Okay.
I don't need to yet.
Fair play. And my captaincy, and I'm hoping every week. I think that writing it down, this is going to be like a proper thing where I'm going to feel like I'm going to be tail between my legs, having to come back and explain why I've gone against myself if I get this wrong. But captaincy is do what Mikel at transfer, I think it's at transfer checker, I don't know. I don't know what the argument was actually called. Actually, I should probably look that up.
I'll get it.
But I know it's Mikel's algorithm. I've got here, and I'm actually a patron of it, which is a very rare thing that I'm actually a patron of, and it maybe just shows that I'm just like, oh, okay. The transfer algorithm at Mikel Tokfan on Twitter. So the idea is I'm going to do whatever that algorithm, which is trusted by a whole host of amazing managers like Josh Moore is cheating, and also like Fabio Borge. I'm going to basically do what that tells me to do every week in terms of captaincy, not in terms of transfers, but in terms of captaincy. This week, Thomas do Salah. I did Salah. The only exception is that if there's number one pick, next week we might say Kevin De Bruyne, buy, and I'm not going to be selling Salah or Bruno to do that, and I'm not going to be, just doing something random to make that all kind of work. So that's how I'm going to go with number 2. So this week, obviously, I went with the captaincy algorithm, and hopefully this every week it will just be like captaincy, did it, moving on. Transfers in a 50-50 situation, take the hit. I've got Gundogan this week. I think we'll see, but I don't think I'm going to be taking a hit there. I think it'll just be a straight shot out because there's a lot of different players I could do.
You don't feel the need to get Son in, and then you could start taking a hit.
Because I think that's going to leave me with a 4.5, to 4.5, and that is not good in midfield. Like
what about one shot Alan?
Oh God. Well, we actually there is a 4.5 I'll bring up later on just for lols. And the transfers take a chance on form, buying bandwagoning players wherever possible. Maybe I should have got Pogba actually, but again we'll speak about this because I think it's one of those things where it's 1 week's worth of data and 1 week worth of knowledge, and it's difficult to kind of say at the moment whether a player's informed based on one thing happening. So I'm going to excuse myself, Pogba, amazingly, but someone like Ben Rama or something probably is the person who I'm going to have to be transferring him because this objective, taking a chance on form, buying bandwagoning players wherever possible, and I hope they turn to season-long picks, is going to be one that's perhaps going to be governing the move that I make with Gundogan, because I think that it's very likely. I'll speak about this later, but I think it's very likely to play. Anyway, a few objectives there. I mean, Nick, I know that you're obviously taking a step back this year, but are there any objectives you've got in mind? Any kind of principles you're trying to adhere to?
Yeah, I have actually. So, as you know, one of the reasons I stopped doing the pods was sort of changing life factors, which basically means I've got less time now to watch every single game, to sort of meticulously dedicate lots of hours studying each potential FPL player. And as such, like, I guess one of my objectives for this year is to listen more to what I would refer to as the hive mind, and perhaps just not be too pig-headed in my own decision making. So previously, like, for instance, last year, as you know, I've talked about this in sort of wrap-up pods, but, the market was trending heavily, players like Lingard and Gundogan, and I kind of resisted just getting these guys in. I kind of looked at them and I was like, these guys don't have the underlying stats, they don't have the history. I'm cleverer than that. I'm looking at a random guy like Pulisic, actually, and thinking he's got the potential to explode, and he's a much better player than Lingard, that kind of thing. And to a certain extent, that obviously didn't work out for me last season. So this year, I am going to kind of follow what's trending, the momentum picks to a certain extent, and accept that I don't necessarily know what's best. I like to believe in my own ability to win FPL and think actually I can outsmart everyone. But there's so many great players, and that hive mind on Twitter is so strong, and I think so far applying that approach did work pretty well, because I went for Ben Rama, and this guy definitely, you probably know me, that this would not be a natural selection for me, picking Ben Rama, just because I would be overthinking it, and I'd see obviously he did nothing last year. He had, I think, 1 goal, 6 assists or something like that. And, I'd say he's not got the history. There's plenty of other picks around that price that did excellently last year, perhaps in Harvey Barnes or someone like that. And, Simica is another example of that as well, player just who's never virtually, I think, barely played any Premier League minutes ever, and
6 minutes, I think it was last year.
Target this guy, and obviously it's 4 million, so slightly different case. But going for some of those picks, those momentum picks, trying to follow the trends a little bit more. Is something that I'm going to be targeting this season, it's I guess similar as well with captaincy, kind of following a similar thing to what Anthony has said here, really, and yourself to a certain extent. It's just trusting those big hitters, not trying to be too clever. I think calculated gambles can be good, but we've had so much experience now with trying to play these calculated gambles with these calculated risks, and nearly every time we get those calculations wrong, don't we? And we should have just trusted the calculations that were presented by other people ultimately.
Yes, maybe grimacing emoji. Excellent. So basically similar to my sort of 1 and 3 with trying to take a chance with form players. I think that's nicely sort of repackaged as being like, I don't know everything, so I'm going to let the hive mind help guide me. And then the captaincy, I guess following the algos or following, as you say, whatever else you're going to follow as a guide. That totally makes sense, Nick. Yeah, that's cool. Right, let's move on to your favorite section, the market forces. Obviously, we didn't know you would be here, but I like the fact that you'll be doing, is your favorite section the one that's quoted in David Wardell's book as being the thing that gets you going, keeps you ticking over. Do you want to take the reins on this one, Nick? Let us know what's going on in the market, and Anthony could obviously aid and abet you as usual.
Yeah, sure. I had a quick look before we went on air just to see what actually is happening. So in terms of the transfers in, it's all about Paul Pogba, and I know we're going to talk about him a little bit later, but he really is the trending in player. That's partly because he wasn't a template pick ahead of this game week. Everyone had the likes of, mostly people had Bruno, a few people like myself had Greenwood, we all mostly had Luke Shaw as well, but Pogba certainly was under the radar. At the start of the transfer window, there was so much speculation about him leaving, and that seems to have died down, and he seems to be playing a key role now. And he had great Euros as well with France. I mean, putting in some excellent performances at least. And started off with a quad assist, 4 assists, 16 points, a huge return, and already had a price rise as well. So he's up to 7.6 million now, but still looks like a massive bargain at that price. So 350,000 managers have jumped on the Pog wagon here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite interesting actually with Pogba. Just Fantasy Football Fix have a transfer combination algorithm thing going on, and Harvey Barnes to Paul Pogba makes up 3.8% of all transfers that have been carried out so far right now, which is just quite interesting to see how many people are selling Harvey Barnes, and I guess that buries the lead on what's coming up in the transfers out. But amongst the other players that are being transferred in and quite popular is and his Man United teammate, of course, Bruno Fernandes, who is up in price already to 12.1. And I think a bit like you say about Pogba, Nick, good value for that. But I think the really interesting popular transfer in is Richarlison for me. The fact that he's already up to 7.6, having done quite well. But I would have said that Calvert-Lewin, who's only the 5th most transferred in forward, is probably the better pick of those two. And yet, he's been transferred in by about half as many people. So it's 215,000-ish. For Richarlison, whereas Calvert-Lewin has just kind of crossed 105,000 transfers in right now.
Yeah, I think with Richarlison, there's a few red flags there for me personally. I mean, he's in good form. He had a really good Olympics with Brazil, and he's straight back in. No summer break at all. But got a goal and assist against Southampton. But it is worth highlighting as well with the upcoming international break, the early international break. There's a huge chance that he might miss a couple of game weeks as well because of Brazil's fixture schedule. So that is a bit of a concern. So I'd probably, if I was targeting an Everton forward, I'd be sticking with Calvert-Lewin over Richarlison there. But 3rd most transferred in player he is. Otherwise, it's also Lukaku. So obviously didn't play this week, but it's now signed for Chelsea. And obviously, we all rate him as a player and know how great he is, and he's 11.5 million in FPL, so a lot of money to spend, and it's like how do we fit Lukaku in our squads? But I think for me personally, it's a watch and wait, just because they've got I mean, Chelsea's next 5 are pretty tough. They've got sort of Spurs, City, Arsenal, Liverpool in there.
Arsenal are just outside the relegation zone. It's pretty good. Pretty good game to have next, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and also Ben White is not the tallest centre back, and is not the best with crosses and diagonal balls, is he?
Yeah, well, exactly. So, I mean, maybe he will explode in his first game at Chelsea, but I think for me, it's a watch and wait and see how it goes for him. And certainly can't even afford him to get in my team anyway. There's plenty of other good forwards out there, but it's such a bit of a watch and wait. But to round up the top five, Simicaz is the other one that makes up that top five. 187,000 transfers in for him. Already had a price. No, he hasn't had a price rise yet. Actually, yeah, he's still at 4 million. But I think he's about to have one.
Halfway to profit, guys. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And he started. So, those concerns were unwarranted, and they've got Burnley at home up next. He even took some corners. So,
more crosses in the game than Trent.
He had more crosses than any player in the whole entire league this week, actually. But the funniest thing about them is that absolutely none of them found their man, according to the stats. I know some of them looked good, but
I was going to throw in with that Lukaku point that Mason Mount actually did have the most successful crosses this game week. So there you go. I guess neatly segueing onto Lukaku, who people selling for Lukaku? Kane. So 200,000 managers have regretted their decision to start with Harry Kane, despite the fact it was well publicised he wasn't playing game week 1. And
the transfers out in general, I think, is characterised by people who put in players who they didn't realise weren't going to be playing. You've got.
I was going to say I've got a Lemmings gif going through my mind. I mean, I'm not being too disparaging. I'm sure if you listen to this, obviously we love and respect everybody who plays FPL, but there are a few decisions here that you would question.
The most sold forwards: Kane, Iheanacho, Cavani. The most sold midfielders: it's Saka, Maddison, Grealish, Havertz, Sancho. I think it gives you a bit of an indication. Funnily enough, though, Ben White is the top most sold defender.
He's quite low on the list, though, isn't he? Because if you're kind of selling a 4.5 defender, I think that's probably one of those where you're kind of like, I mean, if anything, maybe we'll get onto it in a little bit, but selling Target, for example, might be one that I'd probably class as being one that you might want to think about. But no, an interesting set of market forces there, and there's definitely a lot that always goes on in the first game week, all reactionary, and I think that we'll be kind of, Anthony, looking at this sort of thing for the next kind of 3 or 4 weeks and kind of going, well, he's rising because he did a goal. I think that's probably going to be it, isn't it? There will be a Yannick Vestergaard moment for Leicester, I guarantee it.
People might be reminded of this time last year when Heung-min Son featured as the most sold and the most bought player, I think 5 of the first 6 game weeks. And so we could quite easily see something like that start to happen. It's just the cycle of the market forces in the early weeks. And it does play absolute havoc with prices because, at this point, a 0.1 price wise is effectively 2 transfers if you don't have the budget for it because you need to sell someone else to make it happen. You have to pay attention to price movements as it stands right now.
It's a circle of FPL. Anyway, let's move on to the main kind of bit this week. Obviously, there's a preamble. We're doing little bits here and there. We're not going to have a big, long, what's the main question sort of thing going on because, as Anthony said, as a data pod without much data to draw on this week, it's one where we talk about what we can around a core question, kind of, which is what can we take from game week 1? And to form this question, I said it's my good buddy David, aka FPL Elf, who really summed this up for me. And he basically asked, I've been thinking to myself, how do I separate out the useful and not so useful information we received from the games in game week 1? So much can chop and change at this point. What do I do? If you're watching as well, you can see that I've used a font appropriate way of expressing his view. But I guess last time, I guess it might be a good time to review. That and how this change matters very quickly. It's a minute game 1 revisit from me. Last time I reviewed game week 1 data for the last 7 years and found that basically there's a 27 goal average on a regular game week versus 27.5 goal average on a regular game week 1. I think there's a difference of 0.45 goals more scored on. There was a difference of 0.45 more goals scored in game week 1. There also tended to be more goals scored away. The team away from home scored more goals in game week 1. There were fewer 0-0s. There's the most score was 0. And the majority of matches featured a clean sheet on one side or the other. And also there were around 3 in 10 games that were going to feature more than 4 goals. But game week 1, 2021-22 happened. there are lots of goals this game week 1, which could potentially put me in the mud. But no, I was very careful and made sure I caveated everything. You know me, you know I do that. I always say it could be. I think if you do listen to last week's podcast, you'll hear me say maybe this is the game week that everyone can remember, and so it proved. So I get my crystal ball out. I could get that little snippet and be like, I predicted it. No, I'm not going to do that. But there were 34 goals scored this game week 1. 34. 7 more than the overall average of 27. It's the highest scoring game week 1 in the last 8 years. And obviously, I can't speak to if game week 1 this season. Sorry, I can't speak to if game week 1 this year versus the season total this year has been better or worse in terms of averages. But game week 1 goals scored is now up from, in terms of an average, from 27.57, whatever it is, to 28.4. Obviously, 28, but more goals are now scored in game week 1 than they were before this game week 1. And if it's a high scoring season, we might sort of see this overall tally sort of tick up as well. Basically, we can't make any assertions because we don't know basically how the season's going to unfold. And if I did know, then I'd do very well at FPL this year. The key one is that also last time, as I kind of alluded to earlier, I asserted a few things. There were more goals scored away from home than at home. Last season in particular, 8 goals were scored at home, 18 away. No fans, COVID. It was all kind of sanitized. There was a mode of no nil-nils, 7-ish clean sheets. We were expecting per 7-ish clean sheets we're expecting per game week 1. And we're expecting 3 to 4 games with 4+ goals scored. What we actually saw was something which kind of exploded everything. So 21 goals were scored at home this game week 1. Yeah, it pushed up the average from 12 to 13, and that's the highest comfortably over the last 8 years. In fact, before this, the joint highest was 15 goals, 1920, 2017-18 at home. So 6 more goals have been scored at home. I think that's probably something that we'll definitely talk about in a second. And away from home, 13 goals were scored. That's actually not the lowest, but it's second lowest. Still had nil-nils, the mode being 0. You had less clean sheets than normal. So in the past few years, we've had at least 7 clean sheets. Last kind of 4 years, that is. This time it was 5 clean sheets, and there were slightly more times where there were 4+ goals scored in the match. There were 4. So it was a big game week 1. Really, it's the highest scoring game week 1 in 8 seasons, and the home advantage is back with a vengeance. That's for sure. Definitely something that's worth kind of just meditating on just a sec. So there were still few nil-nils. There were fewer clean sheets than in previous seasons, as we saw, because of all the goals that were scored. And the mode is now that 4 in 10 games will feature more than 4 goals. So a bit of a goal fest. What can we take from game week 1 then, guys? I think there's obviously a lot of interesting stuff we can speak about here. We've got questions on bandwagons and transfer management later, so maybe we'll leave that out. But it was a high scorer, wasn't it? The template, as we've mentioned in the market forces and also have mentioned in our own sort of game reviews, did well. And maybe that's dampened transfer market enthusiasm. Like, what do you make about this? Anthony, what are your views on kind of the game week that you saw unfold in front of you?
Yeah, so without going into specifics, I think some of the more interesting things were kind of related to just rules and how they were applied and maybe how that might go going forward. And it's basically just the diminished role of VAR in things. Be that through the fact that the offside line is much thicker now, and there's been plenty of commentary on this.
Isn't it? Was it the third Bruno goal that was a bit?
The third Bruno goal, the one that's played through by Lindelof. That wouldn't have been a goal last year, yeah. Correct. And basically what it is that when, if you'll remember previously, they used to try to draw the line for the defender and for the attacker. If those overlap, it's fine. That's basically what the new rule is. So yes, that Bruno goal counted, and there were other ones that counted too. Another one with an on-pitch decision that stood, which perhaps wouldn't have stood last year, was the Tarkowski header, to put Burnley 1-0 up against Brighton after just 2 minutes. He barged through Neil Maupay, and many would have thought that was a foul. I think it would have been a foul too. I think what many people understand is a foul, but at the same time, should a player like Neil Maupay be allowed to just stand there and block an important runner like Tarkowski from a Burnley set piece? Probably shouldn't. So I'm not as convinced it was a foul, but it is the type of thing that would have looked terrible on VAR and would have been overturned last year. And I think that's kind of the consensus in the media. So yeah, an interesting one nevertheless. And the fans, I think it's not something we touched on the pod enough. Perhaps maybe we should have, but I think we're too data driven to get into it. But the fact is that the fans being there did make more of an impact than I think we gave it credit for. Tom's already noted, of course, that the home teams were doing quite well and that home advantage is back with a vengeance. It will be really interesting to see if when the other 10 teams play at home in game week 2, whether that changes. Every team that was away last week is home next week. I went and checked. So it'd be very interesting to see if we kind of see that pattern continuing. And I know to be drawing any sort of conclusions off that tiny sample still wouldn't be much, but at the same time, it will be very interesting to see. Fans being back, it has been way more emotional than I would have thought, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. James Planet FPL mentioned, there were things like flags being put up and banners and things which would never have been done before, but they were making a conscious effort all through the leagues to try to create a sense of atmosphere, which completely makes sense. But you mentioned Bruno a minute ago. And I think that, we're not going to run through all of the games, but I think the United game is just worth mentioning from that perspective of fans making a difference or something else making a difference, because Bruno's XG was 0.75 according to Fix. 4 shots, he scored a hat-trick. He was smashing into the box when Greenwood pulled wide, basically. And Pogba, 4 assists from an XA of 0.68, 5 key passes. It was one of those where there was a real tension between the stat modelers and the eye testers that game. And it's a nice one to kind of bring in the fans there, because something, obviously there's the quality of the players involved, but there was an extra sort of impetus for these guys, for those things to kind of come off. The variance, if you were... if your name's Analytic FPL Simon or your name's Jamie Wee Rogue, the variance is off-piste. But to the eye, United dominated leads in every department. And I think the Pogba assist to Greenwood really underpins this. And worth just kind of looking up. That could well go down to being the pass of the season. A great ball, but one of those has got a low XA on it. So if you look at the individual kind of expected stats from that goal, that pass, the XA is very low. So basically Pogba hit it into space. But Greenwood took it on, and a classic, brilliant Greenwood finish as well. So fairly low XA. Overall, United, their XA was 1.27, Leeds 0.82. Final score 5-1. One of those where external factors were going to impact the outcome, and I think fans had a huge impact on that.
Yeah, with that Pogba, you're talking about his assists as well. I would say he was quite fortunate to get that first assist too. And I think this is more from the eye test than it is from the XA of it, because when the chance was taken down when Bruno took down the ball successfully with that absolutely dulcet touch for his first goal, it then became a high XG chance with a good XA. But the ability to take that down is something that there's a handful of footballers in the world can do consistently. And it just happened to happen that way. So, in another world, Pogba might have had, I think, 2 assists is kind of fair to say of what he had. It would have been a bit of an overperformance, but to get 4 from a 0.6 XA was pretty fantastic. Like put in this perspective, actually, the second highest XG for any player on the pitch was who, Tom?
Rafinha?
Yeah, it was. Well done. Yeah, so it was Rafinha with a 0.33 XG. Most of that coming from one particularly good, but he only had 2 shots. One of those was a 0.29
at the end, where everyone didn't own him, breathed a sigh of relief, right?
Correct. Yeah, me included for sure. And that was actually one of the best chances in the whole entire game, and he didn't score it. Rafinha also had an XA of 0.13, by the way, which, it's about a quarter of what Pogba had. So, it's
but he
wasn't doing too badly.
He was so close so many times, like drag backs and stuff. Like, we'll mention it later on, the Gundogan thing, but no, definitely.
Bodes well for him. And the Ayling goal, about as good as Alan's shot, a 0.03 XG shot.
So that was a fun bastard though, wasn't it? That was a great goal. Before I bring Nick in, the one thing I want to note here very, very quickly is that Brighton won an XG war in that Duffy, Mopé, loads of shots. Duffy, you're relevant again, Anthony.
4 shots for a combined XG of 0.06.
Brighton lost.
Where's the flag, Anthony?
He's flying it somewhere. But Brighton lost the XG war. They had an XG of 1.76 to Burnley's 1.99, but they won 2-1. So it's happened. Finally, it's happened.
There it is.
Hooray! Well done, Burnley, and some Potter magic has done it. Nick, is there anything you particularly picked up from this first round of games?
Yeah, I think you guys have summed it up pretty well about the home advantage, just how much of an impact that had. And it's just like as well, you know, with Spurs as well, beating Man City. You know, I was going into that game really negative. I was being very negative ahead of that game. I was expecting us to maybe concede 3-4 goals, but, you know, likes of Eric Dyer played out of his skin. And just the fact, you know, obviously the home fans supporting us just played such a crucial role there in getting us over the line, especially obviously considering all the circumstances that are going around in the background behind that game. And it's like that with a few of the other games as well, of course, with Brentford's first ever game in the Premier League. Just like the atmosphere there was absolutely electric, and I think that really inspired the players in ahead of winning that game. And I'm kind of one of those people that's always like looked at home advantage a little bit negatively, thinking, you know, these are all professional footballers, they're just doing their job, you know, they're not really impacted or affected by the atmosphere around them. The better players on the day will perform the best. But I think, you know, especially considering the circumstances of last year with no fans, that having those stadiums full of fans again has just really added that extra impact. We saw it as well with England during the Euros. Just home advantage, the crowds at Wembley just absolutely inspired the players so in so many of those games. So I think that's something that we do need to bear in mind to a certain extent when we're picking our captains over the course of the season, when we're doing our transfers, just thinking about that home advantage and how that's going to play, because it did play a key role this game week.
I mean, it was 3 out of 10, wasn't it? Away wins, and maybe it could have been 4. You know, if actually City won the XG war, 2.41 XG versus 1.3, but the actual game was decided by that good Son goal. But akin to Brighton, there were a couple of impresario away performances that did happen. One was the routine victory for Liverpool against Norwich. Obviously, that's a huge miss. I mean, Nick, you and I were both off our seats thinking we'd lost the clean. Well, I think we've lost double clean sheet. That big miss by your previous man when he was at Middlesbrough, Ben Gibson, a great save by Alisson. 4.5 million. Rupp, 4 shots, and most shots to 4.5s of anybody. It was pretty advanced. And Shimikas actually had a couple of attempts, same as Jota. Jota had 2 shots, by the way, both of them big chances. But West Ham, much agony to lots of ecstasy for all people who were involved. Obviously, people like Nick with double up. Wow, yeah, well done. So many people, including me, were ruining Wilson and also regressing Benny Rama and Antonio by half time. I think there were so many kind of regretful tweets out there. Probably a prime example of why live tweeting is a terrible idea and why I love the fact you can reply to your tweets. But yeah, I tweeted in the second half, 52 minutes in, I think it was, that Antonio's positioning was concerning me. You know, he was drifting wide, dropping deep, and then sniff. 53rd minute, he assisted Ben Rama. 63rd minute, he missed a penalty for Suchek to score. And 60th minute, he scored his own goal. And my phone started going off, and I was like, oh no, right, okay, change who can reply, only people that I follow. And it's like suddenly it's all over. I was in the mud. But I maintain they were a bit might worrying before that. But there were a few decent away performances. And if for example, City's had gone one way, and a couple other things, like Aston Villa, actually, their XG was marginally better than Watford's, incredibly. I think because of the Dings pen, to be fair. So non-pen obviously would be completely, there'd be no contest. It's just because of that penalty. Buendia, 0 chances created, only successful in 13 of his 7, only successful in the 7 of his 13 full passes. Woof. But a few things not kind of going the away team's way. So I think, Anthony, you're right on the button there in terms of you need to see whether this happens again in terms of the home teams, and whether it is the fact that it was kind of how things fell out on the day rather than being a compelling argument. The fans are making a massive difference. But I felt the home difference in emotionally, sentimentally watching the games, if that makes any sense at all, Anthony.
No, it absolutely does. I think that's basically what I was alluding to as well. It was visceral. It very much was, and I suspect it will be the same again, because it is for fans at home grounds all across England. It is the exact same thing again. It is their first time seeing them with a full stadium or close to it. So yeah, I suspect it will be pretty much like that. I think in my other takeaways is just this was a high scoring game week, but a huge amount of that does, and sorry, this is so stating the obvious, comes down to the fact that most people had both Bruno and Salah, and most people captained one of those two. So, you know, that accounts for half of people's ton basically straight away, and a good bit more than the half. And that makes it a pretty big game week. And I don't think we can expect that most of the time. Like, you know, like, don't, like, yes, you've got good teams. I wouldn't start getting panicked if things don't go right next week, but you won't be getting 100 every week either. You know, like someone like Bruno and Salah, like if they return 30 to 35 game weeks out of the 38, that's extraordinarily good. But that still leaves plenty of times if they blank, and that leaves plenty of time where your captaincy will blank, even if it's on one of them. So yeah, get ready for the pain, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely feel that as well. Like, there's been obviously a lot of hype and excitement about what happened in Game Week 1, but I think things are going to change very, very rapidly. For instance, you know, we know that Manchester City have Norwich up next, and there could be a complete shake-up of that template after that game, and we might see a totally different set of performers. And, you know, we saw it as well. So go back to the Euros, like where Sterling was excellent and Bruno was completely anonymous for Portugal. And obviously is kind of playing into a certain extent in Ronaldo's shadow, and it's very different between club and country. But I think we have to just be very much on our guard about changing dynamics, especially as well with the transfer market not closed. So many clubs are still going to be completing those transfers, and we've got new players coming in like Lukaku, and there's obviously something happening with Harry Kane as well. There's going to be a lot of change in the next couple of weeks, and a lot of players, you know, Buendia, as you said, he had a shocking debut. Ben White had a shocking debut, but, you know, it might change next week. They might have some more time to train with their clubs and do better.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, overall, I'm not sure we can take too much from the season in its early stages. Like, obviously, I hope things are going to be, you know, devastating and unpredictable from a fan point of view. There's going to be goals flying in. It's going to be a 34 goal average season versus the usual 27. But, you know, if you're new and listening to us, you know, welcome, we love you. But this will not be, as Anthony alluded to a second ago, a constant occurrence. You know, you're not going to see, as Nick mentioned, you know, all of this happening all the time. Hold your horses. A 40-pointer is definitely on its bike for next week. I mean, it's a bit of a mere point, but I'm a data person. I'm not an analytics guy, but, you know, I'm a data person. I like to be able to evidence my assertions quantitatively as well as qualitatively. I think we've kind of shared a couple of observations. And fundamentally, though, I've got a sample size of 1 at the moment, and I'm supremely uncomfortable with having to make a transfer based off that. So it's one of them where, I mean, it's been a great game week. It was a great game week. There were loads of goals scored. But I struggle to take too many lessons from it. You know, overall, I think there are going to be some tactical things I might do. So, for example, you know, buy Ben Rama off the fact that you know, he's 6.0, decent price for the guy that I've got who is injured. Obviously, Gundogan was actually taking good positions, but that might be one of the little things that I do. But I wouldn't be drawing overall conclusions. Is that fair, Anthony?
I think it is, actually. I've got an interesting one on Ben Rama. That was a headed goal that he scored. How many headed goals do you think he has scored in his career, both of you?
Bagel.
How many was that?
0. Bagel.
Okay. And Tom and Nick, sorry?
Yeah, I'll go with 2.
2, dead on.
Oh.
You remember well his goal. I think it was in Ligue 1 in 2015. Yeah. So yeah, he scored his second headed goal of his whole career at the weekend. So I guess what that tells you is, okay, I don't want to be like completely stubborn about pointing out this fact, but I think what it tells you is that he doesn't tend to get in the position that he found himself in to score that headed goal. And he certainly doesn't tend to capitalize on it, and so it's an unusual goal for Ben Rama to score, the position he found himself in, and without that he doesn't have a huge XG. So perhaps it's one of these things where the fact that he'd scored is going to start off a bit of a bandwagon on FPL. I'd be very surprised if he hasn't had a price rise by the end of this week, but it'll be interesting to see if he can maintain it, because that is not the type of goal that you bought Ben Rama for, even if he has good underlying stats.
Fair enough, but I think maybe it's the positioning as well. Anyway, we'll get into this in a little bit. Good kind of general kind of wash up of all the kind of start of the season stuff. Take a break here and move on to the correspondence and questions just after this.
So we're back, and it's time for the correspondence section and the Q&A. And so something slightly different this week. We've actually got a video sent to us from Paddy, FPL Viking. Very curious to see what he has to say this week. Do you want to roll the VT, Tom?
Yes, here we go.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Who Got the Assist for inviting me onto the podcast. I'm sorry I can't actually be there live tonight, as I'm currently in LA. I'm quite a big deal over in America at the moment, and I'm just over there, doing my thing for promoting FPL and things like that. Suppose that one of the things you're probably wondering is like, how did an FPL genius such as myself go with Pogba over Greenwood and Sancho, things like that? Well, it's very simple, really. I'm a simple man. I don't overthink too much. I looked at the fixtures, done a bit of tinkering. I didn't do as much tinkering now this season as I usually did, probably because I'm busy swimming, doing the Lord's work for a few charities and things like that. You can follow me there on Instagram, the Viking Dippers. So what happened, this all went down in the last couple of hours. I was looking at the United fixtures, which are fantastic. I seen Greenwood. A lot of people were, going with Greenwood, and I just thought he mightn't get the full 90 minutes, and I didn't want that. And I knew Pogba was going to get the full 90, and I thought, what, Pogba's he's going to shine. Just had it in my gut. Always go with your gut. Like, Pogba's 3.2% owned, and he was hardly in anybody's FPL teams, and I thought to myself, he's going in mine. So out went Rafinha, in went Greenwood, then out went Greenwood, and then went Pogba. And let me tell you, when that first assist went in, I was like, fucking brilliant. I was just relieved, because you just want a return, from your FPL players. And the second one went in, put my hand down my shorts. Third one went in. Can't really say what happened then, but look, I was roaring the house up and down then. The fourth one went in, and did he get fourth? I've lost count, but it was just brilliant. Great start. Game week 1 is flying, off to a flyer now, and the phone has stopped ringing. Like, they're even looking for me to replace some hosts on other shows, like there's surgery there, like Flappies in the Mud. They're looking for me. Cheaters, Josh and Bran want me in as a third man. But I'm just going to stay loyal to the FPL Hangover. That's my crew, and they backed me. And you know what? They made the right choice, because I'm fucking going to win FPL this year, and I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, guys, it's been a pleasure, and I'll see you for Game Week 2.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm going to have to edit that, so make sure the podcast can still stay as a thing. And on YouTube, I'm going to have to change it to be 18 plus.
We don't want that explicit tab on it.
No, we're not playing FPL here. But yeah, a really interesting sort of thing there with Paddy. He obviously messaged.
He didn't have to go through the usual correspondence, which is the email whogotttheassist@gmail.com. He went through the Tom and myself's WhatsApp group, which is called Doherty, from the controversy.
The video on Twitter as well, pretending that I was on the phone to him. But yeah, no, I mean, Anthony, do you want to just speak us through the correspondence and kind of make some sense about what we should speak about here in terms of correspondence issues?
Yes, indeed. Well, the correspondence section usually is a segment of this show where we allow listeners to send in longer form questions, addendums to previous shows, poetry, or indeed self-congratulatory videos, where we hear what people are saying, and we leave them air their views in a much more, I guess, long form way than we usually would in the Q&A section, which is just kind of rapid fire questions that we kind of knit together, lots of them at the same time. So it's a pretty versatile slot, and it's really useful for allowing us to maybe get at the zeitgeist in FPL, or to deal with meta questions, which we just like to deal with on a very regular basis on the podcast. So thanks to Paddy for sending that particular one in. I guess what he's hinting at is a general discussion about punts and how they might have paid off. And I guess what we're really focusing in on is your 3rd/4th midfielder slot, which I think generally would have been, when we talked on the price pod, the 6 to, at a stretch, 9 million bracket, but really we're really focusing on the 6.5 to kind of 7.5, and I guess you could speak to 8 million with Jack Grealish slot, and how that might have paid out, how it might have paid off, and I guess whether it is the slot that we think is one that's good for using as a punt, and whether or not, I guess, we can identify a particularly good punt from it, either from just this week that's gone by or kind of looking forward. So it's a very, very general discussion on that particular slot in our teams.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as I moaned about in my game week kind of outcome, getting that right is often the difference between a good week and a bad one, actually. Because I think midfield 3, midfield 4 are those ones who are going to make a difference if there are kind of, in the engaged community, the majority is going to be 8 or 9 players are going to be those kind of guys. And Pogba's risen in value already, as Nick mentioned earlier on. As we saw with Pog's XA, at least, I did say, I tweeted at the time, he's bought his France boost today. But the outcome's obviously an outlier, and one that Paddy should 100% enjoy. I guess throughout the season, it's more of a balance. So at the moment, as Anthony said right at the start, no data pre-game week 1. And as Paddy said, it's more of a feeding more than anything, I guess. And sometimes there is more of an obvious move in this sort of kind of region, but early doors things are always puntable, aren't they? And I think that he did really well to kind of identify a potential individual who could return, and he was richly rewarded for that. Nick, what do you reckon to all this?
Yeah, I think certainly that sort of third mid, fourth mid is that kind of differential area where we're going to be looking at our teams and saying, okay, we've got some key men in defence. You'd like Trent, you've got your key midfielders, perhaps you've got your key sort of forwards as well, and then you've kind of got you've got these two or three slots just to play with, just to kind of go for something a little bit different, a little bit niche. I mean, obviously the Ben Rama wagon happened on Twitter, and that was kind of like the popular differential, as you like, because no one would have ever called that we'd all end up with Ben Rama in our teams about 2 months ago. So that kind of slot is where we're looking at. And I think Pogba, it's a fantastic call there to get him in. But I also stand by my pick, Mason Greenwood, for similar reasons. Obviously, Paddy highlighted the Manchester United fixtures there, and they are absolutely fantastic. We know also that, with the likes of Rashford being out, with the likes of Cavani being out, that Mason Greenwood and Sancho was obviously still settling in, that Mason Greenwood was going to start. And I still really, really like him as a pick. I think he's potentially going to have his breakthrough season this year and get double figures for goals. So I kind of stand by him and why I selected him as well. But obviously, I think Pogba, another great pick there, and he's top of the market force, is now going to be a huge wagon over the course of the next couple of game weeks, especially with that sort of nice fixture of Southampton coming up next. But the other one I wanted to call out as well, just sort of is Maida Sarr. I think he's a really, really good pick at 6 million. He's obviously been Watford for a couple of seasons now, but he played excellently against Aston Villa and Watford as well. They've got a pretty decent fixture up next, haven't they? So they're playing Brighton. So I think bear
that one in mind, I think, Nick, for the for questions in a minute. But definitely one that I'd mentioned there as well, as being a really good pick in that sort of puntable category, which I guess is 7.5 and below. And also Anthony and I have got players who have problems. Gundogan for me,
Pepe
and Pepe for Anthony. Wow, I still can't do someone with Pepe. I'll go Adam 3-5 figures.
Hey, almost worked.
I think you're his hero. Almost works. But really good to hear from Paddy, and obviously really happy for him. One of those things where if you do have that kind of feeling game week 1, it is recoverable if it does go wrong, as you see with the likes of Hans, Harvey Barnes, and you see the likes with as you see from the likes of Gundogan with me, Pepe with Anthony. So it's a prime time to do it, and if either of those had paid off for either me or Anthony, then we'd be laughing right now. So Paddy's a great example for kind of the extreme end, I think, looking at the XA and what Pogba actually delivered. But there we go. Right, let's move on to the questions, the listener questions. Thank you very much for those. I know they don't stay up for very long. I think I do them kind of on Monday in the morning because I've only got basically I've got time between 11 and 12 every kind of day, every kind of Monday, to get something done for WGTA, and a lot of that is usually the questions being done then. So it's not going to be one of those things that's thrown up and left. I'm going to just go in, get my questions, and then kind of delete the tweet. But we had a lot of great ones this time round. And the first one, the first kind of theme, I guess, and also we're going to throw these all into a theme because I don't want to leave anybody out. It's kind of bandwagons and market management, potentially kind of continuing on from our first half chat. We kind of didn't really speak about it because I said we had questions on it. But Dave, CZ, April, Anthony, and or maybe Anthony. Maybe this is an Anthony. He's got a Scottish flag next to his name. Maybe this is an Anthony. And Kane Woodman asks essentially about how we're going to manage bandwagons and price shifts this year. Who are these bandwagons, and what will our approach be? Especially as Kane Woodman, not Harry Kane. Kane Woodman points out there's more scrutiny on FPL specific players than ever before. And Bungle Laguna also said, what the hell are we going to do going forward with Lukaku and Kane/Son, especially if Salah and Bruno keep doing the job? It's really important that this year could be the one which is a bit different to past seasons. I mean, Anthony and I spoke about this during the preseason, but this is a year where you've got a lot of premiums going. So the 200 Club, last year was kind of the usual suspects. And the last few years, we've been a premium down effectively. With Hazard out and nobody really coming to replace him. So, Timo Werner failed hard. This year, we've got Salah, Kane, Bruno, maybe Mane, maybe KDB, Lukaku, and maybe Sterling, all ahead, all above 11 million. All could play a role in the template at some point, and all could be firing at once, which will definitely create market volatility and throw into sharp relief, Anthony's question here about the pros and cons of catching up, the pros and cons of catching player price rises versus following the transfer. Are we going to be waiting a week or jumping in, honouring the you snooze, you lose sort of ethos of last season, last year, as I kind of alluded to just then, the latter one massively. The importance of choice, I think, we really brought to the fore this year. What do you guys reckon here? Anthony, what are you going to do in terms of managing the bandwagons and managing the market? How are you going to be approaching things, at least for the short term? Obviously, things are going to develop, but
I think we touched on this a little bit earlier on, and I was kind of saying that a 0.1 rise right now is effectively a 0.5 in how it can make a player completely unreachable in your squad without taking a hit. So I think that highlights how important it is to keep on top of the price changes. It's not so much the bandwagon, but the effect of the bandwagon that you need to be on top of, because just the bandwagon itself becomes almost inaccessible to you if you're not careful very, very easily at the moment. Now, when I look at the bandwagons that are starting to form right now, I'm not sure if I feel the need to make a move. I guess it's basically touching upon who we talked about, the market forces, but the transferred in people, the likes of Pogba, Richarlison, Benrahma, Lukaku, Canos is up there as well, in midfielders, Antonio, and then it's quite a few of the guys who are in the template, and then the likes of Sarr, DCL, Dennis, etc. Now, I don't think there's any of those that I don't own that I feel the need to rush to get into my side right now. And now I do have a space to do so when I have to move on Nicola Pepe, but I still don't think that I'm necessarily jumping. I could have jumped across to Pogba if I'd made a move straight away. I didn't. And I am tempted to jump onto Benrahma or Sarr, I do not think. So I'm not totally driven by bandwagons right now. I'm still trying to play my own game to some extent, but there is a very strong argument for trying to build value in your team now, because if you don't do it now, you will obviously build value kind of accidentally with who you have in your team, but you could find yourself, a million down quite easily in game week 20 something or 30 something, which makes life an awful lot more difficult for you through chip and wildcard season.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, as I kind of alluded to earlier, I think catching those bandwagons, those early transfers is going to be critical this season, but you also obviously have to approach it to a certain extent with a little bit of degree of caution. If you've got players that are returning week in, week out, like Bruno and Salah, you're not going to be taking these guys out. That's just going to be extremely high risk, even to fit in the likes of Kane or Lukaku if they start scoring, or one of the City guys perhaps as well. And I think it's going to be about that rotating cast in the sort of third and fourth midfielders we just kind of were talking about. And I think, it's going to be the case that obviously I've got Greenwood and Benrahma right now, but I don't think those hype trains are necessarily going to last more than a few weeks, just because of rotation at those clubs and fixture shifts as well. So finding that sort of where to spend that next money will be critical. But for me, I'm very comfortable. I don't need to make a move at this particular moment in time because everyone returns, and I think that's a certain extent it's going to be common across the whole sort of playing population at the moment. No one's really going to be taking hits. A few of you guys might be making moves just because you've got shoulder injury with Gundogan and sort of you're looking to move on Pepe, but it's kind of obvious in fact that like the players being sold, they're all kind of randoms that shouldn't have been in the team anyway from in the market forces. The top five were all these kind of characters like Kane and Cavani, and if you'd actually been following the press conferences you wouldn't have those players in your team. And it's like the most transferred out player that wasn't kind of a random pick was Ben White's after his debut to forget. So I think to a certain extent, there's not going to be too much market movement this week, and there's not really any huge bandwagons you need to urgently jump on. But that's just not a problem as far as I'm concerned. I think rolling transfer game week 2, I think there's going to be a lot more movement after next week.
I think we'll get onto it just a second in terms of that, because there will be some people like me and Anthony, and the majority of this podcast will be looking at making movements in the market. But if you have done okay in game week 1 and you haven't got some issue or 7.5-ish kind of guy, then it will happen. But only thing with all of this is that it's the same as my third objective this year, that I'm going to trust form, quote unquote. I'm not entirely sure it applies actually with Pogba. Squirm from my objectives, but that is one of those things that I'm not entirely sure it's quite there. But I might go there with Benrahma. Actually, Dave CZ asked about upcoming bandwagons as well. I think there may be Villa sell-off in game week 4 when their fixtures stiffen. Leeds maybe buy in game week 5 when their fixtures get good, and Son as well if there's a versus Wolves. And I think there'll be a lot of teams featuring him pretty quickly. Let's move on to Bye Bye Bruno. A rare one, an email. So you don't have to email in for correspondence. You can email in a game week question if you want to. Who got the assist at gmail.com. Shocking in terms of how straightforward their email address is. But Michael Hall via email asks for his friend. He doesn't ask for him. He asks for his friend. If he doesn't have Bruno, and should he just bite the bullet and get him in ahead of Southampton? I think so. For me, obviously he's provided the stats again, as we spoke about earlier. 1 week sample size, etc. And just think about a couple of years ago when he joined FPL, Mr. Analytic FPL Simon got a lot of stick from us on the summer special because he was a skeptic for a while the points rolled in. He was kind of saying, this guy's going to keep it up, whatever.
It takes about 20 game weeks for Simon to think that form has gone, or that form has crystallized into ability. So it means that he just let that whole half season go by, which
exactly.
Fair enough. Like he has his belief in the stats.
But, it's great to have principles, isn't it?
But the thing with Bruno though, it's not just a 1 week sample size, is it, Tom?
No, it's not. And I think it's in this situation, it's best to just follow your pride. I think right off your sunk costs, if you're a Bruno person, given the opening fixtures for United, which would have maybe persuaded me to just kind of think, I'm just going to go with it and I can deal with it afterwards. But hey, you know what? I'm sure you had your reasons. And I probably would be thinking about buying him back in this week. I mean, Nick, you said that obviously everyone should be rolling their transfer, but if you were a Bruno individual, would that be different?
Yeah, no, I mean, didn't say everyone should be rolling their transfer. I just said that it's going to be a lot more rolling of the transfer than you would have typically expected just because of the high scores. But I think it is a, like I say, it is a tough one because I think obviously, he's not going to score a hat trick every week, and there is that sunk cost to a certain extent. And because of his price as well, 12 million, now 12 1.1 million, you know, a lot of these managers are going to be looking at the teams and thinking, how do I actually get this guy in now? Because you might be looking at a -4 or even a -8 to get him in, and that's even more lost points. That puts you even further behind your competitors when in fact, you know, this week, for instance, you might say, well, I'm going to continue to zag and target De Bruyne for Norwich at home, or a couple of the City guys like Mahrez or Grealish or something like that, and try and regain that advantage against those managers that went with Bruno, because obviously you might be 20-30 points or so behind now from those guys, so you've got a bit of catching up to do, and you're not going to catch up by getting the same player as your fellow competitors. So if you've already zagged, then I don't see the harm of continuing to zag. So there is a case for continuing to stick with your principles that meant you didn't have Bruno in the first place. So I think, you know, I can understand that argument. That being said, we know that Southampton got ruined by Spurs this time last year in game week 2. That was the big Son haul that we all remember, and I can see this one turning into a cricket score again. So, you know, it's a highly risky strategy. But if you've gone this far, you know, then there are other picks out there, especially with, you know, the Man City games and the Chelsea players and stuff like that.
Yeah, like you'd have to presume with Michael's team that he's got more of the like 7.5-ish midfielders, you know, the punt bucket basically that we were talking about. He's just got quite a lot of them. And I guess the ones that he potentially has, players the likes of which myself and Tom have, the Gundogan's and the Pepes of this world, along with the likes of presumably Grealish and Jota, for example. And, you know, every dog has its day in that bracket. And I think, you know, as you say, Nick, you've made your bed not having Bruno because you've got quite a few good players in to, you know, balance up your team across the board. And I guess, yeah, to abandon the plan, as is what you're getting after 1 week, is a bit like, you might be just selling the points. You might be taking a hit to sell the points that are about to come for.
If you've got Mahrez or Son or something like that, then certainly you're not really going to be selling these guys now, are you?
It's all contextual, isn't it? So, I mean, if you're, I know James playing FPL was in the 100-point club for you guys, didn't have Bruno, and there's always the kind of description of the, you know, who an essential player is. I think he didn't, you know, subscribe to that with Bruno, and he basically made the point that if he'd have not had Bruno, he'd have gotten less points. So if he'd had Bruno, he'd have gotten less points from doing that. So it's not an X versus Y kind of thing. And maybe what you're saying, Anthony, is completely true. That you know, next week it might not happen because there was obviously this outsized sort of outcome with Bruno, and we've looked at the XG of that. We've mentioned that. And maybe Southampton won't be the fodder for him scoring a hat-trick. A hat-trick is, you know, that's one of the things that is such an extreme sense of variance based on the analytic pod that we did in the summer special, isn't it, Anthony? It's not one of those things that you can assume is going to happen every week. And with Bruno, he is a points machine. He's one of those that, like Mo Salah, who is going to be a player who's going to return consistently. But you can get away with not having Bruno. But you can't ever say a player is essential. I think if you didn't have Bruno, didn't have Salah, you were punished massively, and perhaps that was a little bit too much daring do. But at the same time, like
nobody who has Bruno and Salah expects them to get north of 15 points regularly. Do you know? Like, and that's what happened.
Absolutely. I think it's one of those that it was kind of extreme variance. It was extreme luck that things went the way they did. But equally, if you were at Bruno and you're getting twitchy and you want to correct that problem, you had a really bad game week 1, it may be something worth doing because of how Southampton were in their first game week, losing to Everton. I think that was quite one of those games where maybe you might be thinking, oh, hang on, everyone's going to be targeting that game. It could be worth moving on to. All right, let's move on to the next question. It is about the Gundogan. The Gundogan halts. So maybe this brings in Anthony as well with the Pepe Pedalo, I guess. The Pepe Pedalo, I think that's the only thing I can think of beginning with a P. Nick, anything else? The Pepe Peugeot 306?
Pepe Parachute.
Yeah, that's probably more apt.
Pepe Parachute? No, he's not going down to earth pretty quickly. That's
Paraglider?
a Pepe broken parachute,
Pepe Paraglider, yeah. Pepe
but
Paper Aeroplane.
it's all there, isn't it? So basically, it's a 7.5 million or below mid focus, something which may move 2 out of 3 of this pod into making a change this time round. So Luke Jurdy, FL Robin Hoods, Beth McDevitt, FL Dyson, Hudafi, we're all in touch with similar question. What we're going to do about similarly stricken by a shoulder or collarbone, knack, Gundogan. Luke in particular says, we're looking at Greenwood, Ben Rama, what we're going to do. So Anthony, you got Pepe, so not quite Gundogan, but you always plan to make a change here.
Yeah.
What you're thinking now? What's your thinking now?
Yeah, it's time to jump off the Pepe paddleboard. That's what we'll go with. And into the sea of options that are there. We have to figure. I don't actually know which one I will go for. I'm glad actually the Gundogan's off the table because he was a tempting option for me. I thought though it would be a Man City midfielder that I would go for. And when I saw Ferran Torres starting up front for City against Spurs, I went, right, that's probably who I'm going to be picking. But unfortunately, the fact that he didn't score, didn't return, it was a bit of... City lacked a focal point in their attack kind of the whole entire time. The likes of Grealish were able to get on the ball. They were able to bring it towards the final third. And then there was this real kind of the whole entire team effectively going, and then what? And they having no answer. And of course, the hole in both teams that was Harry Kane was kind of obviously well discussed. But I just feel like someone like Ferran Torres no longer feels like as safe, quote unquote, as safe as Pep Rec can get. I feel like he's gone down in that particular situation. And that makes my decision an awful lot harder to make. And I really am still uncomfortable thinking about it. I was tempted to just continue punting, and I'm really coming off from left field without any good statistical basis with this choice. And it's with good old Wilfred Zaha at home to Brentford. This is Palace's first game at home of the season, and if they were to have one of those home bounces like we've seen other teams have, then that could be fun. And it just means that I can just continue kind of pushing along here. The other option is that I actually just come down to a totally different price bracket and start to allow myself the gap to move Greenwood towards Son. It will take 3 transfers. Well, through the third transfer will be getting Son in to get there, and I could start to free up the funds. I'm not sure if I can be bothered though. Because I was thinking I was going to wildcard anyway, and I'm as it stands right now, I still feel like I'm going to follow through on that particular plan. And so that means then that I actually could just continue punting, and the Zaha idea isn't totally wild and wildly off. I don't like Ismail Assar. He's someone that you mentioned, Nick, and I think we might as well go into that one right now. Whilst he had a particularly good game and he was particularly eye-catching against Aston Villa, he will never play or won't play many left backs as obliging as Matt Targett was that day. I thought from the eye test perspective, I actually decided to sit down and watch that game. So I watched, I think, 70 minutes of the 90 live, and then obviously watched highlights as well of that game. And what I noticed about Ismail Assar so much was that he kept receiving the ball right out in the touchline, coming down, kind of getting towards the byline, and then trying to make his way in. And it just so happened that he made his way in so many times because he was able to beat Targett so many times. And yes, of course, some of that comes down to the fact that Sarr is a very good dribbler, but part of that does also come down to the fact that Targett had a bit of a horror show. And once Ashley Young was put on him, he wasn't getting anywhere near the same amount of joy. So I feel like his goal threat was actually exaggerated. And in XG terms, his goal threat wasn't even that big anyway. Like I think it was a 0.16 XG that he had in the game.
In the game, he genuinely tore apart Target. Like he was taken off in 45 minutes and replaced with Ashley Young.
And it worked.
It did. But I mean, he definitely one of those players for 6 where you can see that there's going to be something about him throughout the course of the season. I'm not thinking about the 200 points from him. I'm thinking about 130, 140.
I think he's a consistent assist threat. That's what I actually think he is, though, based on what we saw. Like he created a nice few chances, and that was good. And I think that's actually what you can expect more from, and the odd goal. If he does turn out to be on penalties, which is a thing that people have been talking about in preseason, and we obviously still haven't had the chance to know, that makes him a far better option than we know right now. But the fact of the matter was that I just personally, anyway, from my own personal eye test, I didn't like what I saw once I saw the stats. And I hope I'm not being caught in confirmation bias here that, you know, I see his XG was indeed 0.13. So he had his 4 shots, but like, or 3 shots, but like the goal that he actually scored was deflected. It wasn't a particularly good chance anyway. One of them was off a corner and one of them was a bit of a no-hoper from outside the box. Created quite a few chances. An XA though of 0.24. I think that's where he's more sustainable. And in the way he was playing out to the touchline, into the byline, get across in, yeah, I can see that doing well for him. And for 6 million, that's good. But we've 6.5, we have a consistent against anyone goal threat, for example, in Rafinha, who I feel like is a much better option for 0.5 more.
That's yeah. I think there's definitely a few options on the table here. That's for sure. I mean, I'm looking at Benrahma and Greenwood for sure, but Rafinha is the one that I kind of keep going back to and thinking, you know what, we've had one game week of evidence, but things can change so much. Like next week, we could all be saying, "Oh, the guys who bought in last week are absolutely trash." I mean, Benrahma XGI of 0.88 or 0.51, if you believe stats will fix. Don't even know. Overperformed his expected effectively, and Greenwood, yeah, okay. I mean, he was the beat Bruno decoy this game, which just gone, and he worked his magic. And with this, I think it really comes down to fixtures and predictions. You know, I'll see what Mikel says, but Greenwood is predicted as a higher scorer over the next 3 to 4 game weeks at 7.5, according to FPL Review via Fantasy Football Hub, and Man United have the third best attacking fixtures according to that same measure. Did I see enough of Benrahma? Well, yeah, I think I did. I know what you said earlier about the headed chance, but he was doing the Lingard, kind of linking it all together, making it all work. And 6.0 from him would give me 1.5 million in the bank for future flex. So, for example, when I sell the ineffectual Danny Ings in game week 4, when Villa's fixtures stiffen, both these players, Lingard, Benrahma, and Mr. Greenwood have a bit of a year but with Europe. So from game week 4 onwards, West Ham definitely needs to be in the market for a striker, or Antonio is going to break down, and Lingard rumours back maybe might change Benrahma. And Greenwood has a lot of competition in general, but no, Rafinha, one big chance missed last game, as you know, I spotted as well that he was the guy who had the second highest XG in that game. A serious X lively about him as usual versus United. Leads with their own fans well. If this sort of mirrors and you've got the home fan thing going on. At 6.5, there's real, as Late Rise would put it, blue guy potential about this guy, and I suspect not too many people would be looking at him, because everyone's going to be looking at what happened in the last game week, because that's the one thing that we've got at the moment, the one bit of evidence that we can push everything forward. I'm keen to look outside of the forced binary, I suppose, of kind of being like, well, Greenwood or Benrahma, because they've both done things in the game we've just gone.
Yeah, I just feel like if Benrahma doesn't end up with a header which is like an anathema for his whole entire career, we're seeing him very differently, and we're maybe talking about him as an assisting the assister type of player, because I think an awful lot of that link-up play, which yes, Tom, you did say he did have, was relatively far away from goal. You know, it's on that edge of the box, giving it to someone who's probably going to be trying to give it to someone else who's going to, to thread through to score. And I don't know, I wasn't seeing enough of him to get that excited. And West Ham, it's Antonio is the pick for me there. I have Soufal. I'm not sure how delighted I am with having Soufal, but I'm not sure if it's an attack that you quote unquote need to double up on. And again, we're back to talking about Rafinha here. It's like, would you rather
exactly
put the money over there?
Are you going to spread the risk or hedge the bets? Because like, are West Ham going to be beating every team they meet 4-2 with a glut of riches all around? Like, all of the attacking players are going to be smashing it. I mean, Nick, what do you reckon to this? I mean, is it one of those where you shouldn't be too led by game week 1? I feel like we need your sort of balanced approach to understanding what we do here.
Well, yeah, I think there are other options that they haven't mentioned. For instance, Joe Willock scoring 7 goals in a row at the end of last season in excellent form. He's only 6 million. He didn't play last week because he'd only just signed, and obviously he plays for Newcastle, which is a giant red flag in a lot of people's eyes. But I know you were keen on Callum Wilson, and obviously I think Willock had a great end of the season last year, and Newcastle do have some excellent fixtures, and Villa and Southampton up next. As we just talked about, Target was rubbish. Southampton don't have a defence any longer, so could be some returns there for sure. I'll call him out. He's not really a call out for you guys just because you already tripled up, but I think Diego Jota also needs a shout out at only 7.5 million. As I said, most of us have Tsimikas and Trent and Salah, so we can't fit him in, but still he scored, started as a centre forward, but then Bobby did come on the pitch later, so he might drop back a little bit in future games, but I still think he's a great shout out. And then also the Chelsea guys, so we're all worried obviously about Lukaku and how the hell we're going to fit in Lukaku, but Pulisic has started really well for them, and with Ziyech's injury he should be nailed on for the short term, and he scored a goal. And I've always really liked him as a pick. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's only 8 million. Or Mason Mount, one of our favourites from previous years of podding, 7.5 million. As we said, we got Arsenal next, and they've do have some tough fixtures, Chelsea. But if you're looking in the long term, getting a Chelsea guy in early, I think will be of great benefit, just because I think they're going to have a fantastic campaign this season, and I think they're going to do really well. And obviously as well, the other one I wanted to say is just Jack Grealish. Again, if you need that extra 0.5 million, so you can't necessarily do a straight swap, but I feel like that with all the rotation and confusion, especially Torres, I think he did look like a good pick, but plays badly. I think Grealish is going to be perhaps the best bargain pick of all the Manchester City players, attacking players next season, and he's the one that I would want out of all of them because he's only 8 million.
Yeah, I'll make a bit of a shout here, actually. I suspect that because the template doesn't necessarily have many, or if any, Chelsea or City attackers in it right now, I suspect that the managers who nail the shift to Chelsea and City at the right time, and probably preempt it just a little bit, are the ones who are going to find themselves in the high ranks come around game week 10. And as we've talked about in previous pods and in previous seasons, there kind of tends to be a rich gets richer effect from there, where the template forms and it becomes harder and harder to catch up with those people. And it's something I'm very, very conscious of at the moment, is should I already be looking at this move? And it's just trying to figure out if so, who.
Yeah, I think we're quite unusual though. I think most people are going to be in the Nick boat where you're not going to be making a move because you've started phenomenally well. We all have. And we've both got enforced moves. Anthony because he planned it, me because of an injury. Potentially at this point, I should probably say it was one of those. All right, let's move to the next kind of things. There's a couple of other transfer questions which I want to do kind of quick fire. So getting into kind of depth kind of stuff here. Christoph asks if Harvey Barnes is a hold or sell. For me as a hold, I think that there was enough in that game, which is beyond the stats actually. That meant that he was worth holding on to. I was doubting him a little bit before Gundogan's injury happened. One shot, no key passes is really bad. But it's the guy, he was close to doing something. There's lots of kind of failed link ups with Jamie Vardy. So I think that he's going to be one that I keep on holding to. Did either of you have Harvey Barnes?
No, I don't. No. But he had 3 attempted passes into the box. If one of those goes right, things are very different. But it's just how peripheral he was kind of in general in the game is what would kind of make me a little bit concerned about him. Like,
getting back into it, isn't he?
Yeah, well, like, look at that, and that's fair enough too. But it's kind of like an awful lot of his touches came kind of fairly close to the halfway line, or kind of coming a little bit forward from that, and you're kind of like, oh, man, like if we want FPL points, we need you a bit further forward. And with that Leicester team, you're kind of like, I suspect they need to get Iheanacho in there in a kind of more long-term sense. Like,
I think it's one of those. If I was wildcarding, if I was compelled to wildcard tomorrow, then he would not be anywhere near my team because maybe I'd done one of those things where I assumed he'd come back in full kind of force.
But Tom, I was thinking you could take a hit there. Surely, have you not thought about going for the -4, downgrading him to 6 million, and then you've got 8.5 million to spend on? You could get like Grealish and Willock.
What about that objective, Tom?
Or something.
on
following the
no,
momentum.
that's the thing. There's no 50-50 perceptually for me here. Whereas before there may be, but I know what you're saying. That's always not every week. There will be a -4 option. The -4 could be to remove Gundogan and Barnes to 4.5 and Son. Is that worth -4 right now? It might be through the beauty of hindsight, but no, not.
Sorry, do you know who I think I failed to mention there, and I definitely should have mentioned as one of my potential 6 million options? I went off in my Sarr diatribe and just forgot to mention the other player that I actually wanted to throw into the conversation. It's Adama Traore, who obviously didn't get.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. You know what you're doing. You know
all fart, no poo.
You've looked at the data and gone, oh, dude, this guy's on stuff.
If you
watch him play, you can't. He needs shooting lessons, bro. And you know he does, and you know that he's all fart no poo, as Nick just mentioned. Like, no, that's a stats only. That's a totally qualitative paint.
6 shots, and one of those chances was so good, and he put it wide. Which I think does talk about the problem. Did he hit the
target with any of them?
He hit the target once.
If you look at prior history, that is 16%. The reason he is that price. There's a reason this all happens.
I know, but Ismaila Sarr may never see the goal for another 3-4 weeks.
No,
Adama Traore will muscle his way through, and I'm being a bit facetious, but
his movement was good enough. So, and Traore will always do that. I think that he needs to prove to people he is all fart no poo, and with all his fixtures next couple of weeks, it's worth just kind of watching and waiting. The final one: should we be worried of these weird transfer questions? At least, should we be worried with owning Villa defence, or was it just a blip? Because there are obviously loads of people who kind of said, you know what, I'm getting Martinez in, I'm getting Target to cover Martinez, which was very close to me. Their HCC was okay, 7 from bottom for HCC on 1.07. 3 actually conceded. Was it a bit of a bad time? Well, if you own Target, I'd be very, very tempted to sell. I'm really sorry, but I would be. Or bench him through a 4.5. You've got aliens coming or whatever, because he was torn a new one basically by Sarr, and Young came on, and there was a Young move back to cover him, and there was much less change in the back four. You could maybe leave 1 more week, but if you are a Target owner, I'd be a little bit worried. It's just one of those, isn't it? I suppose, really. Wildcard thoughts. Next question. FPL fella, we met him, Nick, didn't we? At 24/7, very nice guy. And he asked, "What's everyone's opinion on the best time to play your first wildcard?" Anthony, you're going a little bit early by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I haven't picked a week now, and I haven't a specific plan, but I broadly kind of went into this season happy with the idea that I would wildcard around, let's say, game weeks 3 to 7, and I'm kind of continuing in that mold, and I'm making my transfers without any real. I guess I feel that when I need to shift to a new premium, that's when I'll be doing the wild card. I'm not going to start taking
it's so hard to say I'm going to it's so hard to say I'm really definitely doing something at this point.
Yeah, correct. And it's very hard to even pick out the fixture shifts, for example. Like Chelsea's fixtures don't shift for another while, but honestly, if Lukaku kind of goes off on one, I'm going to find it very hard to ignore him, even as Chelsea kind of go through more tough fixtures, because I really think he's possibly in the fixture proof category. He's a very, very, very different player to the one that we would have seen playing for Manchester United a few years ago. Even just physically, he looks very, very different. He's much fitter. He's probably faster, I presume, based on that. He's obviously got his confidence up, everything that's kind of gone with it. I back him against almost anyone, and I could totally see how he would make me need to tear up a team. Son, there's obviously a big fixture shift coming. He's obviously got a goal already. The goal that he got probably wasn't his best chance. He kind of had his opportunities against City. Now, you won't ever get to play against City every week if you're Tottenham, who kind of do well on the counter attack against City in particular. But at the same time, Son has shown himself to be able to score against most teams in the division, and he is the type of player who could make me want to do that wild card. So I guess to answer FPL Fella's question, soon. But at the same time, if you're happy with your squad and you don't feel the need to make a change, don't.
Yeah, I think I'm looking maybe at game week 7 if I was to pick a date. out the hat, and then that is really because of the Chelsea fixture shift. I just think I'm going to want Lukaku for that. I just think he's going to have to come into my side. I might have to make a few changes. I think City's fixtures are pretty good from then on as well, and Manchester United's get a lot tougher actually. So I feel like that's a really good opportunity to make a few changes. The likes of Brighton and stuff. Decent early run ends as well. So maybe I'll switch my goalkeeper out to someone different, and just make a few changes around that point.
Do you know what? I just think it's so entirely likely that by the time game week 7, which is when Chelsea are at home to Southampton, that's kind of followed by like a run of green fixtures. It's entirely possible that Lukaku's on 4 goals at that point.
Do you know what as well? That obviously there's the game week 7 kind of turnaround, but Anthony, remember me saying, and I'm sure many other people have said this as well, but Chelsea was ridiculous on the fixtures from game 24 onwards, where they don't really play a top 14 from last year until game week 37. So you've got obviously you've got your Champions League and whatever all kind of playing in there. But if there's a serious title charge from them, and you can't really be kind of writing them off, and you're going to have. I think there is definitely occasion to look at this and think there's a glue guy sort of appearance here from game week 7 point onwards. Same as Munich Cup. That's exactly how we're looking at it. Maybe Man City as well. They've got a shift in game week 8 after Liverpool game. Do I want to be getting involved in Pep Roulette other than Ruben Diaz? Maybe. But around game week 4 or 5, what I will do is I'll have I have a wild card team in mind, and I'll keep an eye on prices as it evolves. And if things start to look mighty close to what I want, from game week 6 or so, I may be persuaded to go early. But one of the things that I won't do is get to go in with my wild card during an international break because of all the COVID complexity. I think it's one of the only kind of real sort of concedes I'm going to do to COVID this year, where I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to be kind of making my changes while players are coming back and while we're not really sure what goes on. The Rafinha thing you guys were both saying. Another thing I'm not going to do in this year, early flag plant, a really obvious one as well, is not mess it up by selling the performing players. Because I remember last year, Nick and I were both on the pod, and I sold Kane and Son on my wild card last year because City's prices moved around. And obviously you're going to face palm, Anthony. And obviously that's
I know. I'm saying I'm not face palming. I'm more feeling sorry for you because I just didn't have them. I was ignoring them. I was ignoring them at the time. I was getting the same punishment.
At the time, it made loads of sense to do it because City's fixtures were changing massively, but they kept going for the whole year. And obviously, you can never have a crystal ball and know who's going to be in the 200 club. But both of those players were performing, and it was a mistake to do that. So we'll come back to that when it happens. Yeah, that's one of the things I'll be doing on wildcard. And the final question this week is the classic from Jaden's Kitchen: Captain Salah or Fernandes? Nick, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm sticking with Salah. I think that's probably obvious. I think they are both excellent captains for the armband. And I also think that they're both going to have an effective ownership of over 100%. So we're not going to benefit from both. It's going to be impossible to benefit from both. But for me, it's Salah. I think he just gets the armband. He's got the home fixture, and he's also my sole midfield / attacker. So that's what I'm going for.
Yeah, it's the home fixture that's swinging me as well. That's making me want to go with Salah. In contrast, I feel like Southampton really can't afford to have another bad game. It was pretty disappointing the way they kind of rolled over in the end against Everton. And I suspect when they're at home, they will need to tighten it up and will just make life awkward. And with Bruno, of course, there is always the risk that he gets the penalty. And then suddenly, if he's got a penalty and an assist, it's a double figure game before you know it. But at the same time, I do feel like, as with Salah is always the case, the ceiling is so high. And when it's at home to Burnley, that's really good. That's enough for me to just stay safe and I guess stick to that objective that I had of just, Captain Obvious.
That makes absolute sense to captain Bruno Fernandes versus Southampton. But objective 1, captain what Mikel says. Mikel is definitely going to say Salah. So I will do exactly that. Right, let's move on to the end of the podcast. Transfers and captains. I'm going to be captaining Salah. Hooray. I won't be making any changes except for Gundogan. We're looking kind of conspiracy theory sort of level stuff, but like if Gundogan has a little bit of an injury, it's game week 2, how integral he is to Man City. The reason basically I basically bought him. There's no way if he's got a bit of a niggle, he won't be playing. He will be playing against Norwich because that is a perfect game for him to set out, and it feels very Galaxy brain, doesn't it? Like as in idiot brain, like Trump brain, to be moving Gundogan out, a sissy player out before the Norwich game. But I think I'm probably going to be doing it. I'm not entirely sure what I'll do still. I think it's between Ben Rama, Greenwood, and Rafinha. Rafinha feels like one that if I'm not going to be wildcard anytime soon, perhaps I won't be doing. Greenwood feels like kind of the obvious pick. Ben Rama also feels like the objective 3 in terms of going with the form pick. It's tough. It's tough. I'm not entirely sure yet. I think I might be slightly led by how the market forces go. So if I tomorrow see Ben Rama's rising, it might just be I'll go with that, to be fair. I think Greenwood has a lot of competition for his role. So maybe it'll be Ben Rama who does that. I can't see Lingard going there and just Football Manager taking it off him. But I do like the Rafinha idea. I really do, Anthony. I like that kind of, it's game week 1. Things are kind of, everyone's looking at last game week and going, yeah, that's what happened last game week. So that's going to be the way things go. And Rafinha, as you mentioned, missed that big chance. And if he scored that and if he just pulled it back a tiny bit differently, he could have had a goal and an assist in that game, and suddenly we'd all be kind of boning Rafinha. I think he's definitely got it in him, as we said in the preseason price pod, to do more. So I could be looking at Rafinha as just kind of thing, but as Nick said, if he does called off Brazil, then suddenly he is not really viable game week 4 because he gets back on a Friday and Leeds play on the Sunday. They're all short-term punts, I think, slightly actually. I think Ben Rama sounds decent with 6 because it gives me 1.5 in the bank. Maybe that's the one that I go with looking at my fellow objective. I don't know. Anthony, what do you reckon? So getting rid of Pepe, have we convinced you anyway?
It won't be Ben Rama. I'm not interested in him, and it won't be Ismail Assar either. I just haven't seen enough to be convinced by either of those options so far. It is actually between the complete punt based on no decent data that's worth talking about in Zaha, just because Palace are at home and I think have a decent fixture against Brentford. Brentford were good, obviously, against Arsenal. It was a great day. It was an emotional day. They look very cohesive, like they have a plan and things. But at the same time, I just feel like just a game that doesn't have the same sense of occasion might not necessarily bring a result or bring about a performance that merited an occasion. And there might be a bit of a gap there. And just the fact that I guess Zaha is on penalties and is quite good at winning them by himself anyway helps matters. But also I think the Rafinha thing is quite tempting. And I guess we're talking about game week 1 and we're talking about home games being an important thing. Elland Road is anything but a library. And I think that it'll be a very kind of good game for Leeds there. And with that in mind, it kind of feels like it's almost sensible to move on to him now. He's also quite highly owned. Like, he is a real threat to my rank. And, Leeds, Everton are the type of team that Leeds were very good at dispatching last year. Teams around them, teams below them, they went through them more often than not. And I didn't see anything against Southampton to suggest that Everton are impregnable by any means. Obviously, they conceded once, but they kind of, they did open up a few times. There was no, aside from the goal, I wouldn't say there was any like golden chance. And of course, that was an error that allowed it to happen. But at the same time, I felt like they could be got at, and I didn't think they were particularly good. And I think that a Bielsa team could do that. And it might just be prudent to move across. I'm not too concerned about the idea of him being called up and the Copa America problem being, or not the Copa America, the qualifiers being a problem for him, purely because it's just too far away. It's multiple game weeks away, 2 whole game weeks away. And I'm kind of operating this slot for the moment as just a rotating door slot. And if I had to move him again, that's fine. I don't really care. And if the international break causes me enough headaches, I'll just wildcard anyway. So with that in mind, I think if I was to say 70% says Rafinha, 30% says Zaha right now. Nicholas?
Yeah, so for me, as I alluded to, I am rolling my transfer. Not going to be making any wholesale changes. I will probably play Ivan Toney ahead of Luca Dean this week. So going to give Tony a rollout and hopefully he can do more than blank this week. But yeah, no changes here.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I totally see why getting Tony on the pitch this time is kind of tempting. Like that Palace game, like whilst I've said everything I said about Zaha, I think you'd be wise not to leave him on the bench when there's so many people going to be benefiting from those points around you in mini leagues and things this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you've ended up in one of those situations where Anthony and I both wanted to be in, where you didn't have anything to think about. But yeah, it's one of those where you take risks, and you've definitely come on the good side of it. So yeah,
I wanted to make a transfer. I wanted the plan.
All right, let's move on to the final part, which is obviously captains and transfers. Wow, surprising. No, let's move on to the end. Yeah, well, it's been a good one. It's interesting to hear about everything, how it goes, what we do with the teams that we've had, and how we react to game week 1. But yeah, I don't know, it's one of those, isn't it, where you're kind of like, there's one game week of data. There's nothing we can do here. Like, we obviously looked at everything that we've heard and obviously tried to give you some sense of what happens.
I think we have done that, though, Tom. I feel like we've done an awful lot with that data. We've made
we have
very responsible calls, and I think that's what we set out to do at the start of this. And
we need one more. But yeah, no, definitely interesting.
We need one more, which is exactly 10% of what the analytics guy said was enough to actually form a sample for making any sort of conclusions. And we're just going to go with the 2 and go from there. But yeah, exactly. The bigger the sample size, the more we can really talk about the data. But for now, thanks very much for joining us, Nick. It was good to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me back to the pod. Yeah, always nice to catch up with you guys. And yeah, hopefully I won't be too long before I can do another cheeky visit onto the pod.
Absolutely. Doors always open. And thanks everyone else for listening. We were Who Got the Assist. We would really appreciate if you could leave a 5-star review if you liked what you heard, or if you ever liked what you heard from us. It would help us with the algorithms and all that. Start of the season, lots of new listeners being pumped up by the algorithms would be entirely helpful. If you were listening to this but would rather see this, then you can find us on YouTube as well. Just search WGTA and you will find us on YouTube straight away. There's a few hundred people are now joining in and watching these podcasts instead of listening to them. And it's great. It's slightly unedited. It's a bit more rough and ready. And you obviously have Tom's good visuals to go with it, which is good. And you actually get to see FPL King in his, well, he's now FPL Viking, in his correspondence this
full glory
all of its glory, and it's a funny watch, I must say. And he of course was part of the correspondence section. He didn't do it, but what you can do to send in your correspondence is send an email to whogottheassist@gmail.com. Thanks very much, guys.
Yeah, we hope to assist you ahead of game week 1, after game week 1, ahead of game week 2. Obviously it's all going to change, things are all going to change again, but I hope you enjoy listening, and we'll speak to you very, very soon. Goodbye. Thank you very much for watching. It's been great.